Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Cattle, Season 4, Episode 21. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Well, we sound a bit different. We are live together in person across the table here in wonderful Halifax. Nice to see some snow, actually. Yeah, I was in Montreal last week. No snow, none in Toronto. A little bit in Toronto, but it's nice here. It's beautiful. Love Halifax. It's great to be in your hometown, my friend. It's great to be in front of you and do this one in person. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. Now, I've been here for 8 years. I've never seen so much snow here.
Oh, really?
Okay. Oh, yeah. This is not a snow town. And if we do get snow, it just disappears in a few days. And so this is actually really atypical for Halifax. And it is cold. You probably noticed that.
It is a little cold.
It's a minus
here.
8, but it feels more like an Ontario minus 20.
It is. You know, it's funny. I thought it was a bit colder here than I was used to. But anyways, a nice bracing cold. I'm here for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Here for a couple of days with some client work and some great opportunity for you. You and I finally to get on. We almost did it in the fall, but here we are.
That's right.
So we got lots of stuff to go through. Now, speaking of lots of stuff to go through, our guest this week is Ori Cohavi, Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Remilk, live from Israel, talking all about the potential for cultivated, not lab-grown, they don't like that word, but cultivated, created milk, just approved for sale here in Canada by Health Canada. I think we're the fourth country to approve. Very interesting stuff.
Oh, my goodness.
It seems pretty revolutionary to me. I mean, we're not talking plant-based here. We're talking, you'll hear about it. We don't want to,
it's not fake this or fake that.
Nope.
It's the actual same protein.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we've had on the show before, we've both had plant-based folks, but we've also had the Just Eat, which is lab-grown or cultivated. Again, they don't like lab-grown. They think it's a pejorative kind of phrase about it.
I don't like lab-grown. It doesn't sound appetizing. It's precision fermentation.
Precision fermentation that happens in a field near a farm.
That's right.
So it's farm-grown. So there you go.
Using biotechnologies and microbes, basically recreating cells.
Now, where did you come across Remilk? Because I think you brought them up before. Did you meet them in your travels, or did they approach you?
It was last year. Actually, I heard about them, and I was actually writing about them, and they noticed that I was writing about them, and they contacted me, sent me some samples last year. Probably you remember they sent me some samples from Israel, and it was very tough to go through customs because it's dairy.
Sure.
And so we basically got samples through for research, quote unquote. Did try the cream cheese, and it was my wife just put 2 crackers. Basically spread cream cheese on both. One was the actual real stuff. The other was Remilk.
Both real. They would say both real.
Both real. That's right. And it was the same thing. It was basically the same.
You couldn't tell the difference?
No, not at all. So
well, there are some interesting differences. We'll get into that in the interview. Things that aren't in their version of milk that are in dairy. So anyway, it's a great conversation.
It is.
We'll get to that a little later in the show. So let's jump right in. So the latest research in partnership with Cattle, actually, for this research. It's actually a wide-ranging study. I was looking through the study. I mean, ostensibly, it was about discounting and a little bit of how Canadians are thinking about, how and where they find what do we call bruised fruit, or how they get to
expiring food.
Because there was a little bit of that in a couple of weeks ago with a bit of what you call the flip-flop with percentages. But
that's what inspired our survey.
Right. But what I found super interesting, it also unearthed some other things. Like the first thing that I thought that jumped out at me is this increase in frequency of shopping. And you made the point in the survey that this is materially different behavior than what was it, 2018. So precisely 32% increase in average visit frequency since 2018. So let's start there. So in your mind, is that a reflection of what I've called like cash flow shopping? I've only got so much money in my wallet. I'm going to spend it as I go. Is that a post-COVID thing where more people are working from home so they don't have to batch the shopping? Or is this simply, I'm going to spend more time hunting for deals? What's your assessment of that behavior?
Well, I mean, you can call it cash flow shopping. I call it don't want to lose cash flow shopping. Desperate for bargains. And my guess, I don't know how you're reading the plus 32%, which is really a lot. I mean,
it's a big change.
Yeah, it's a big change. And
in an industry where behavior is fairly stable. I mean, country to country, people
very
behave
traditional,
shop.
yeah.
Like you go to Europe and people shop more often. They have smaller fridges, whatever. But
yep.
we haven't seen any of that particular change here. Fridges are as big as they ever were. Or whatever.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I was quite surprised. So my guess is that probably either people wanted to provide themselves with more opportunities to save by going to the same store, or they've actually expanded their portfolio of stores and they're visiting more than just one store.
Because stores don't, in the week, I mean, it's all flyer driven, which tend to last the week. There's not a lot of, unless they're going for near expired food.
Well, yeah, there's some flyer driven traffic for sure, but I think that a lot of people are going into the grocery store with a different mindset. They are thinking about more flexibility around the menu. So, for example, if you go in, you know what you're going to eat on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Thursday, Friday. But if there's a roast beef at half price, let's eat that tonight.
Oh,
so there's more flexibility.
I've done that. I've done that. I've walked in. I was in my store, and it was a Enjoy Tomorrow. It was a Gibreton roast, and I'm like, let's have that because it was off. I don't remember a discount, but I'm like, it's a great product. Let's do that. So we change up what we're going to have now.
So basically, people, it's like sticker seeking in the store, basically looking for those deals, those daily deals. And so we actually explored both in-store and app usage as well, because that's another virtual world that is evolving. Also, when the Loblaw story broke in Canada, Flash Food actually called us. They're out of the U.S. and they told us that their downloads tripled that week.
Wow.
Because of their partnership with Loblaw.
It's interesting. Your survey says basically 58% of people don't participate in that behavior, though.
That's right.
So there's a lot of wide open space for it.
There's a lot of work. Yeah, absolutely. And frankly, I think it's a work in progress, because some of these apps, you buy a bag, like a surprise bag, like Too Good To Go, you buy a bag.
I was just actually looking on my app as you were talking. I was looking for the Too Good To Go, because I interviewed the folks from Metro and Too Good To Go.
Right.
Well, you get by commodities, bakery or whatever.
You either buy a mystery bag or a picture, and when you're buying expiring food, people want to be reassured a little bit. So I actually do think that these apps are great. They really foster this moral contract between consumers and retailers. Retailers wanting to reduce food waste, while consumers want to spend less, want to save more, and reduce food waste as well. They want to become food rescuers. You're empowering consumers.
You're doing something. You're actually doing something.
You're empowering consumers to become food rescuers. But at the same time, is the model right? And I do think there's still some kinks there.
Well, I don't know. It's pretty close. 95, according to the survey, 95.1%, to be precise, would recommend these apps to other people.
Yep.
But you've got only a small percentage of people actually using it. So maybe there's upside. I mean, it all seems to make sense, because it helps the groceries clear out good product. It helps consumers, and they actually make a bit of money doing it, because it's.
But there is a victim out of this: food banks.
Does this food, though, at that point, still able to go to food banks?
Yeah, there's less traffic going to food banks, because the food rescuing part. I mean, supply chains are becoming more efficient. There's less waste, and I mean, I'm on the board of Second Harvest. We've been affected by what's happening with food inflation. People are more careful.
But do you think the food apps have an impact on what's actually in total?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely. Which is why we're encouraging people to give money to food banks and food rescuing agencies, because that's what they can do, and they can stretch $1 way more than you and I can.
What else jumped out at you at the survey? I mean, it's quite actually. your surveys are usually a couple of pages, and you got to nail a few points. So this one's quite
we were bored that day.
There's a lot in here, actually. There's a lot.
And the other thing that surprised me, to be honest, is that we actually did a top 5 of grocers being seen as good bargain providers.
Yep.
So number 1 is Loblaw.
Yeah.
It's the number 1 grocer, so not too overly surprising.
Sure. And they've got a bunch of discount banners, frills.
But you got Walmart, you got Costco, you got Giant Tiger and Metro in the top 5. But which one is not in the top 5? Empire Sobeys.
Interesting. I mean, Costco is interesting because I don't think of them as a discount player at all. I mean, you're getting your value in different.
Walmart is not a discount either. I mean, it's the low price.
Yeah, they're not really high-low.
They're not in the discounting business either. So we measure perceptions. So the perception out there is that Walmart offers good deals, Loblaws as well, and Giant Tiger is just a few years into the fresh stuff.
Yep.
And so you can tell that Giant Tiger is becoming a really interesting player around discounting, and people are paying attention.
So, all right, well, interesting. I'll put a link in the show notes to that survey.
Yep.
I saw a little bit of pick up in some of the newspapers, so you seem to have attracted a bit of attention.
Yep.
Moving on, we seem to be getting some good news about inflation. So we saw some inflation numbers. Canada's food inflation rate in January is 3.9%, the lowest since October 2021. And then we looked at some global inflation numbers that you posted. U.S., it's only the U.S. that's less than us. And you talked about that in the last episode, that's actually going to help Canada, 2.6%. But
it is helping Canada.
It is helping. I mean, Germany 4.2, the UK, although at the other end at 6.9. I mean, that's kind of an own goal for them anyway from Brexit. But you're optimistic about these numbers. You're happy.
I am. I mean, the drop from December to January was 1.1%, and the last time we saw a 1.1% drop in a month was May 2016.
Take me back to Canada's food price report. Is this
pretty consistent what we're predicting? Yep. It's we're basically, we think that we'll end the year at around 2.5%, to be honest, and that's.
Now, remind the audience, what was it in 2023? It was in 5. Was it? What was the?
It was 7.9.
7.9. Yeah. That's a big difference.
Yeah,
right?
And last year in January. Our inflation rate was over 11. So in just a year, things have changed. So we have to thank Ottawa for that. I'm just kidding.
I'm like, what?
A reporter called me. So Ottawa's strategy is working. Markets are working. I don't know. Like Ottawa, because the evidence is just not there.
But you've been saying that all along. You right back to the fall. I remember on the pod you were saying, "Listen, it's going to happen," and you predicted it, and then you predicted it in the food price report. But
I was expecting some Liberal ministers to take credit from what was going on with the CPI report. I didn't hear a lot of noise from Ottawa. I think people are starting to get the fact that things are getting back to normal because we haven't had black swans in over a year. And so the last one was Ukraine, and that's going to be 2 years ago this month. And so we're, and I met a lot of executives representing different companies, and all I'm hearing right now, Michael, supply chains are much better, conditions are more predictable. We can protect our margins. We can predict the future much more easily. We can actually negotiate some promotions.
I hear there's been, the Red Sea crisis. I hear is initially caused a big bump up in container rates, and certainly slowed down some product coming from that part of the world. But then there's an overcapacity in container rates, so it kind of balanced out. Yeah, to your point. But it is still causing some delays because they got to add an extra 15 days onto it.
And we got
CN's got some labor action coming up potentially. What's a year without some CN rail labor action?
Our logistics, man. Oh my God. But I was actually quite reassured to hear from the Minister of Environment and Climate Change that we won't build any roads again. That's great. It's awesome.
Let that guy loose. We talked about that last episode.
And he did have a bad week last week. He not only said that, which is completely ridiculous. It's the opposite that we need. But he did misquote me in the House of Commons. He basically said, and he quoted, as he said, that Sylvain Chalbault from Dalhousie said to the Ag Committee that the carbon tax has no impact on food prices.
Was that the Ag Minister, MacAulay?
It was both. But MacAulay was a few months ago. But last week, Minister Guilbeault basically quoted me, and of course a lot of reporters. I was actually on stage in Ottawa that day, and my phone. I was on stage, so my phone was ringing. I didn't answer until I got off stage. Only to realize that a bunch of reporters were calling me and asking me, "Did you say that? Did you say that the carbon tax has no impact on food prices?" No, that's not what I said. Who said that? Well, the Minister of Environment in the House of Commons. Right. So I had to write a tweet over his saying, listen, this is not what I said. What I said was there is no conclusive evidence that showing that the carbon tax is having any impact at all on food prices, but we can't really, there's not enough evidence, there's not enough data to give us any sense that the carbon tax is impacting retail prices, because a lot of things can impact retail prices. And you, Michael, know this because you're a retail expert.
Well, let's stick with Ottawa. Let's stick with politics. Let them eat lobster. So speaking of Minister MacAulay,
was I hammered for that?
Canada's Minister of Agriculture. So the Twitterati or the Digerati, I saw that picture of him eating lobster. He's over in Malaysia, and I posted a picture of him enjoying some Canadian lobster.
And to be honest, he's with the Lobster Council and Jeff Irvin, who I salute. He's the CEO of the Lobster Council of Canada. So they're on a mission to go
get people to eat more Canadian
lobster.
But you know, it's a funny government, right? Because the perception amongst the people is the government doesn't care about them, that they don't recognize the challenges that people have around food affordability.
Let them eat cake. Let them eat lobster.
You know, and then you show the minister having a lobster. I mean, you made the point. I think maybe you can explain what your perspective was. That he's just doing his job. He's promoting Canadian lobster, and
I still mean it. I actually do believe that he was doing his job. He's actually promoting Canadian products in new markets, and I didn't see anything wrong with that. That's his job. And of course,
Quick Dick wrote about that, but then he read what you wrote and he said, that's a good point, right?
Yeah.
So,
but of course, there's baggage there with the Liberals and the carbon tax, and
they don't start from a good place.
Because Minister MacAulay voted against Bill C-234.
Yeah, was he a farmer at one point?
He was. It was a dairy farmer.
I thought he was a cherry picker. He's cherry picking details, that guy. Boom, boom.
No, but
thought he was a cherry farmer.
No, he's a former dairy farmer, and
cherry picking your words.
I think Bill C-34 rubbed a lot of farmers the wrong way. You know what Quick Dick McDick wrote? I get, and a lot of people actually made comments in reaction to my own comment, saying that they disagree.
And when you say a lot of people, I just checked 102,000 views, 300 plus comments. I didn't go through them all.
Yeah,
maybe I should just upload
Most of them were negative.
I was going to say.
But I honestly, when I read them, I completely understood. Like, I get it. I mean, it's just lobster, Malaysia. The guy looks like he's on vacation. I understand that. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I can understand the discontent.
Last thing, and then we'll get to our interview with Ori from Remilk. We had an all-party agreement, which doesn't happen very often, particularly in this environment, that they all wanted two major grocers to sign the code or else.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking of where that you made the statement that basically you don't see that very often.
When's the last time you saw an entire committee agreeing on something?
I'm sure they do more often than we know.
In ag? In 20 years? First time. Oh, yeah. And even a year ago when the investigation started on food stabilization, they didn't agree on that code, because I actually said that the code is the solution, and they said, the conservatives mainly said, we want less government.
Right. Less government, not more.
And so I explained to them, but when I went back to the Commons 2 weeks ago, I did not hear any objections here. And frankly, Cody Blois, the MP, chair of the committee.
Chair of the committee, yeah.
And everyone else around that table, I have to commend them for doing the homework needed to understand the issue. Now, is the code the right solution? I think it is. In terms of the governance of the code, there's still some things that are unclear. But so what is being recommended is a government-coordinated, industry-led code.
That would be mandatory.
That would be mandatory.
At this point.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. All right. Well, listen, this is we got lots more to talk about. Let's get to our interview with Ori from live from Israel, talking about Remilk. Ever feel like the world of ratings and reviews needed a superhero? Well, enter Cattle, the caped crusader with Canada's largest, most diverse, and daily active consumer panels. That's right, Cattle is not your average podcast sponsor. They're like that cool friend who always knows the hottest trends. I mean, they are the voice of the consumer, after all. So why choose Cattle? Because Cattle excels in consumer insights from your consumer while also blazing trails in the realm of ratings and reviews, pioneering the future landscape of user-generated content. Beyond valuable syndicated receipt data, they stand as unparalleled collector of reviews at scale, irrespective of category or price point. A testament to their impact, partnerships with giants like Walmart, Canadian Tire, and more. Visit AskCattle.com now for an exclusive The Food Professor podcast listener discount on your first review or research campaign today. That's AskCattle.com.
So, Ori, welcome to the Food Professor podcast.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
So, I guess we're just curious to know more about you. How did you become the co-founder of Remilk?
It all started about, I would say more than 20 years ago even. I went and studied a scientific degree, began studying biology, then switching and completing my PhD in protein biochemistry. Thereby, I spent, I would say, almost a decade in the biopharmaceutical industry, mostly around developing and manufacturing of biological drugs, mostly. And about 5 years ago or so, I came to meet with my other co-founder and CEO of Remilk, Aviv Wolf. We actually met through a mutual friend. I was in a place where I was looking for my next challenge, doing something with a positive impact, in this planet. And Aviv was kind of, I would say, in the same place. He came from a background of entrepreneurship, more like around cybersecurity. We got to talking, and from there we, tried to pinpoint an area where we could really make a difference. And early on, we found and got to understand that the food industry in general and the dairy industry in particular are a place where, work needs to be done. Mm-hmm. And I can elaborate a little bit about why and what kind of work. It became apparent very quickly that the current way in which we, as human beings, manufacture food and dairy in particular, is highly destructive for our planet. Mm-hmm. And we were saying to ourselves there must be some better way to do it, and that's how Remilk started forming. Basically understanding that there is a great need to do something about it, about the way we produce food. And on the other hand, getting into the detail of the technology on what kind of solution is there or can we make to actually tackle this problem. Mm-hmm. So this is, I would say, like the general notion that started off Remilk 5 years ago.
From a consumer's perspective, what problems are you trying to solve, I guess? Because, yes, in the scientific literature, there are many studies suggesting that it should be concerned about the current model of producing dairy proteins. But from a consumer perspective, what's the value proposition, I guess?
Well, it's a very good question. Actually, there are, I think, a couple. Obviously, the environmental impact is huge, and it's something that many consumers care about. But we believe that there are also other issues that our technology and our solution can actually help with. One of these is around, I would say, health. And on the other hand, it's around taste and user experience and consumer experience. Basically, there are...
So are you arguing that Remilk's product is healthier than the actual milk or dairy products that we have access to right now?
Yes, because what we actually do in Remilk, and we get asked a lot about if milk is healthy or not, right? Because when I grew up somewhere in the 80s, everyone knew that milk is healthy and it's something that kids should
That's
have.
what we were told, yeah.
Yeah, and now I think that the concept is a little bit different. And for us, having, looking at milk, I think there are benefits to it. For example, the protein, the vitamins, the calcium. But there are also other stuff in milk that you don't necessarily want in your diet, like lactose.
Or need, yeah.
Lactose or cholesterol or growth hormones. And what we do, and I will explain about the solution itself in a couple of minutes, but what we do in essence in Remilk is taking the good parts of milk, especially the protein, but also the calcium and the vitamins, and then building a product around them that does not contain any of the, bad stuff that I mentioned earlier, like the lactose or cholesterol, for instance.
Right. If let's actually get technical a little bit here and unpack the technical part of Remilk. So how do you explain to us in layman terms, I guess, the best you can, how the process actually works? How do you make your product?
Right. So we are using a technology that is called precision fermentation. What's nice about this technology is that it's been around there for many decades, producing food products and nutritional products that we all consume, for example, vitamins. However, up until now, until recent years, it was not possible to utilize this technology to actually produce at scale milk protein. Why? Because this technology used to be and is still, to the most part, very expensive, and I would say fit more to a high value, low volume product. What we did at Remilk is actually turn this model on its head and making a low value, high volume product. And maybe it's a good time to explain a little bit about how this is done.
Yes.
So what we do at Remilk, we use a certain type of microorganism, a yeast actually, very similar to the type of yeast that you would use to produce beer or make your bread. However, we change and bioengineer this yeast to be able to actually produce very large quantities of milk protein, which is identical to the milk protein that you get from a cow.
It's the same thing.
The same thing, the exact same amino acid sequence, which is actually the identity of the protein. And how this is done, we actually use the DNA, which is identical to the DNA of a cow, which is responsible. Actually, it's like I would say the blueprint of how to make a cow protein, but introduce it into the yeast. And this change actually allows the yeast to produce this, as I said, this identical milk protein. After this fermentation process that takes place in fermentation tanks, very much like how we produce a beer, the yeast produces milk protein instead of producing alcohol as you would usually do. And then this protein is, after being produced, it is being separated and purified to get a very, I would say, pure form of the protein that then serve as a basis to the dairy products.
Fascinating. Now, there is this debate out there saying, well, we shouldn't be calling it lab-grown milk or lab-grown dairy proteins, or, of course, the technology is precision fermentation. How should we call this to make the technology more appealing, I guess, to consumers?
It's a very good question. First of all, I also don't like the term lab-grown. Not because
it's not very appetizing.
It's become a pejorative term.
Oh yeah,
in cultivated meat, for example, right? They
That's
hate
why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Exactly, but I don't like this term from another perspective. This is because you produce at scale. You actually use fermentation facilities, real existing, and we use real existing fermentation facilities to do so. If we would have produced it in the lab, we would produce basically nothing, right? So we wouldn't be able to make any dent in the current industry. But because we already scaled this process and produced it manufacturing real industrial setting, this is not lab grown. This is a fermentation based protein, again, which is identical and is already produced at commercial scale.
So I'm a marketer, Ori. My suggestion is you put all your facilities inside a farm, and then you can call it farm grown milk.
Exactly.
Hey, super interesting. So congratulations, you've got Health Canada's approval. I think that's
Bravo.
your third nation. Yeah, is that right?
Actually, the fourth. But who's
The fourth, yeah.
So what are the fourth? I think it's Israel, Singapore, Canada. What's the fourth one?
The U.S. also.
The U.S.
U.S. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Were you surprised, Ori, by Health Canada's response?
Actually, because these are the fourth, as you mentioned, the regulation authority that approved, that green-lighted our product, in essence, we are not very surprised. Obviously, each regulatory body has its own, twists and own specific way on how to do this. But we are, we have some mileage on this, and because other authorities already determined that our protein is identical and also safe to consume, I think we weren't very surprised. Also, we were very happy, and I think the whole process occurred in a very, quick, relatively quick manner, but also very thoroughly.
So you've done, I don't know if I'd call it the hard part, certainly the science part. Now what does the go-to-market strategy look like? So you've got the approvals, which, again, congratulations, not an easy thing to accomplish. But now you've got the other hard part, which is actually going to market with the product. What's the strategy? Do you start in food service or do you go consumer product? I mean, you've got a great brand name. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, happy to elaborate on it to some extent. So our model basically consists of partnerships. So we are not a B2C, which means that we do not directly manufacture and put the products on the market. Rather, we team and partner with existing food and dairy manufacturers, which are also, by the way, part of our investors. We, took the time to think about the situation and where we are strong and where we are not very strong. And what we realized that we are very strong on, developing this precision fermentation, perfecting it, optimizing it, even perfecting and developing the food applications that will eventually reach the consumer. But in terms of production and route to market, it's all about partnerships. And this is what we are actually doing today in Israel. And hopefully apply the same model also in North America, the US and Canada. And actually are right now in the process of locating and getting to these relevant partners in your area. So hopefully we'll be able to quite soon, get products into the market. Now, with regard to where we start, food service, supermarkets, etc., this is, an open question. We are obviously happy to take both routes. Obviously, also very much dependent on our partner because, as I mentioned, it's partnership. So a lot of the discussions, a lot of the strategy around it will be done with the relevant partner.
Okay. Now, one of the critiques or criticisms of cultivated product, I know we've talked to a couple of folks who do cultivated meats, is scaling it, right? So, how do you get it out of a small scale? You've mentioned a couple times that you've got a solution for scaling. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, how do you go from a niche product into large scale? Is there enough precision fermentation containers to make a dent in the market? Do they even exist?
From day one, we have designed our production process to fit into existing fermentation capacity or facilities out there. So there are a few of them around the world, and I'm talking about real, very large scale facilities, about hundreds of thousands of millions of liters in capacity. So these fermentations are
which is mostly the beer industry, yeah?
Not necessarily. It can be different industries with regard to ingredients, even food ingredients or other types of ingredients. Because technically, beer facilities will need, I would say, a higher investment to make them more fit to our process. But luckily, we don't have to go there from day one. We can definitely utilize already ready facilities out there, which, as I mentioned, are already working at very large scales. Now, this will allow us to, I would say, kind of start gaining share in the market, but they are definitely not enough to replace almost $1 trillion industry. For this, additional manufacturing facilities will have to be built in the coming years. So to gradually come into the market and start, as you said, making a dent.
Let's talk about the nutritional value and the other part of marketing. In other words, there will be constituencies who will not be happy with your product. We've seen this already with plant-based, where they've won regulations that don't allow it to be called milk. We're seeing that in the cultivated meat. There in some states in the U.S. they're not allowed to call it meat. How do you educate consumers who are worried, and I think rightly so, about highly processed foods that your food is better? Like, how will it be labeled, and how will they know? And how do you guys think about that?
Yeah. So I think you raised two very I would say basic and fundamental points. One of them is more related to the regulatory framework in which we work, which is related to the geography at which you operate. And the other is more for the consumer part, and how do we explain it to the consumer. For the first part, it really depends on where where you operate, because some countries allow to call it milk, others do not allow to use the term milk. However, in both cases, we do have to mention, and this is in every regulation so far that we work with, that our product is actually dairy. This is because our product contains real dairy protein, which is an allergen. So it's also a matter of safety.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, not to get any consumer mixed up and thinking, okay, this is milk, not milk, or milk-free or whatever. So this is a safety issue that we need to actually label it as contains dairy. However,
so in terms of allergies, allergic reactions are similar. We should expect the similar reactions to your product if you're allergic to dairy in general.
Except there's no lactose, right? So interesting.
Exactly. This is the difference between lactose and allergen. So the lactose is a sugar that naturally exists in milk, and to which most of the people are intolerant to some level. The allergen
7 million Canadians are lactose intolerant. A lot of people.
So and this is the case in other places in the world. For example, Southeast Asia, the situation is even worse in terms of the percentage of population that is lactose intolerant. However, the allergen is a much lower percentage of the population, estimated about 0.5% or so. And for them, our protein, our product, even though it contains zero lactose, it still has the protein, which is the allergen. And then if you're allergic to milk, you cannot have a remilk. However, it's not always the case, of course, that we are allowed to call it milk. So you can, view it from different directions. And regarding the consumer acceptance, so we have already by the way, and other companies in the field already made some consumer, tests and reviews. And there is a very good acceptance of such products.
Really?
Yeah. And the other thing that we really take the time to do right is to explain in a very precise and detailed manner about what we are doing. What is this technology? What is this product? And why is it good for the consumer? Because we believe that transparency is our number one driver of consumer acceptance. Basically, I think we have many things to say about our product that will make consumers, view it in a very, I would say, positive way.
Yeah, I must agree with the transparency part because, as soon as last year, I received a sample from Remilk to try at home, cream cheese. I'm not sure if you're aware, Ori, but I did get a sample and tried it at home and compared your cream cheese with actual cream cheese, and just couldn't distinguish any differences at all. It was actually quite shocking. It was great. It was a great product.
Thank you.
Yeah,
but I'm very happy to hear this because this is exactly what we are doing. Our aim here is not to bring some sort of an alternative that the consumer will say, that's nice, but to bring something which really requires zero compromise. So in terms of taste and texture, you will get exactly the same experience. It doesn't matter if you drink a glass of milk or prepare your cappuccino or, have your bagel with your cream cheese. But in terms of health benefits, obviously, we have this, I think, very compelling claims about why our protein and why our product is in some way superior to dairy.
That's right. Now, of course, getting the cream cheese into Canada was no small feat. Obviously, with the regulations we have at the border and with dairy products, it's Canada can be a complicated place. I'm sure you know that. And one argument that I've heard plenty of times. Last week, I actually wrote an op-ed about your approval. Coming from Health Canada, explain to the Canadian public what this technology is all about, and trying to reassure Canadians. But there were a lot of posts on social media from people, expressing their concerns about the safety of the product. Oh, that's synthetic, made in the lab. It's not safe for human beings. What's your response to that?
So, I think that I have two main points to say about it. One of them is that these consumers are already eating and having products that were made by using exactly the same technology. So vitamins is an obvious case. We all consume vitamins, and many of them come from precision fermentation. The other is more specific to our product. It's been, I would say, meticulously scrutinized by right until now 4 different and independent regulatory bodies, and they have been checking, quite deeply the entire process of how we do it and what we do, and having all the data submitted to them and reviewed by many, many smart people, and they all came to the same conclusion. Our product is very much safe. So, and putting in more even direct terms, we are using a yeast, which is a safe microorganism that we all consume. And we are producing a milk protein that also has been consumed by human beings for thousands of years. Yeah. So no reason, I think, to think that the combination between two safe things, like the yeast and the protein, will result in something that is less than safe.
Mm-hmm. Before I throw it back to Michael, just want to ask you about the future. What's next for Remilk after this great approval from Health Canada?
Yeah, so I think that first of all, we are very happy, and we think that the Canadian market is extremely interesting, and we are counting on consumer acceptance and finding the right partnership in Canada. Once we have this, we'll be very happy to start getting into the Canadian markets, and hopefully you can buy the products from your shelf at the local supermarket, or get a cup of cappuccino with Remilk inside very soon, instead of needing for us to send you like over the air cooled package with the cream cheese inside. So. Yeah.
Well, or you're going to have to come visit us in Montreal, Canada, because it is the home of, I don't know if I should even say this out loud to somebody based in Israel, probably the best bagels I've ever had.
Really?
They are fantastic. So you've got to come and experience it, and you tell us with some of your cream cheese that they've got some great delicacies in the city of Montreal. Well, listen, it's been fantastic. Great.
At high expectation, by the way. I'm looking forward to trying it. Yeah.
This has been great. Where can if folks are interested to learn more and go deeper and follow the progression of your business, where can they go?
So quite happily, please visit our website. We have all the information, explanation about what we do, who we are, how we operate, and also our LinkedIn profile. You can follow us and see and get updates So we'll be the first to know that the product is going to be launched in Canada.
Fantastic. Well, listen, congratulations on your success. Getting approval in 4 very sophisticated markets for your product is certainly a sign of amazing things to follow. So we, on behalf of Sylvain and I, we want to thank you for taking the time to join us on the Food Professor podcast, and appreciated your insights. And we'll be watching because it's super interesting. And I think Canadians will be interested to follow and see what happens next. So once again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ori.
Let's jump around and skip a bit to Beyond Meat. So Beyond Meat has just introduced Beyond Meat 4, which is their latest rev and reformulation of the product. So similar.
Only 4?
I guess there's only been 4 big
official
tranches.
One. I'm sure there were some tweaks. Yeah,
but so the new burger uses avocado oil, cuts its saturated fat by 60%.
Okay.
Slashed the sodium by 20%. Ingredient list is shorter. Changed a few things, put in lentils and bean proteins. So
the ingredient list fits on one package now.
Well, ba-doom boom.
$20 a pop.
Well, this is this thing. I mean, the former darling, can it come back? Like, it's got all the plant-based beef type products are really in not a great place reputationally now. It's seen as very highly processed and priced out. And, they had the moment in time a couple of years ago, and then they seem to lose it. Can they regain it by doing these things and saying, listen, it's less processed and it's better for you? Do you think they can get that momentum back, you think?
I've always recommended to that field, and I actually did some talks for Bridge to Food in Europe and even Asia about this, and I basically told them, you got to become your own. Like, it's not, if you continue to be obsessed with the idea of replicating something people love, if your goal is to replicate beef, for example, but without the animal baggage, you're not going to increase your market share, and especially if your product is more expensive. If your product tastes the same, okay, and looks the same.
By the way, I'm a consumer. I like the product.
Oh, I like the product too, but you got to bring something different to the market. And I've always believed that was Beyond Meat's biggest mistake, to replace the flexitarian. To me, flexitarianism is a mirage.
Oh, interesting.
Everyone is a flexitarian. Everyone is a flexitarian. So it's not about someone who wants to reduce the amount of meat. It's the reasons, and you got to get the person to like a product because of the taste and the texture, and it's absolutely okay if it's different than the real thing. And so, the blood and all that. And I think it's just, again, 91% of Canadians actually enjoy and eat meat. Okay? 91%. So that's something that you really have to focus on, I think.
All right, so still sticking with beef, kind of, sort of. What's going on with this ungraded Mexican beef
Yummy.
That's showing up at the shelves? So I had a bunch of questions about it. Like at first, it had to say ungraded, and my assumption is if it's on the shelf of a grocer in this country, it's safe. It's been approved by Health Canada. But so what's going on?
The CFIA.
The CFIA, yeah. So it's not about safety though. It's got to bring up some questions among the average consumer.
Well, it did. I mean, the first time I saw ungraded Mexican beef was back in October. And I was a bit surprised. Nobody was talking about it. I noticed.
Just takes one post on a social media suddenly.
Well, yeah.
Right.
And actually, in October, I think I posted myself ungraded beef, but it never picked up because I don't have enough followers, I guess. I don't know. But it's about, this, Mike, it's about timing, the right time. And this time around it picked up and people were asking, well, what's going on with ungraded beef?
So basically it seems like, I don't know, is this, we can't find enough beef? Is this...
The grading system is different in Mexico.
Sure.
So in Canada, obviously it's prime, grade AAA, grade triple B, triple A, double A. And but in Mexico, it doesn't work that way. So it can be graded, but it's not unsafe. It is edible.
Sure.
The thing is that you're not necessarily sure what you're getting, and so you may be. And chances are the meat may come from an older cow or a bull. That's the thing.
So maybe it's better for stews than it is for.
If you're buying one of those products, I'm thinking slow cooker.
Okay.
Okay.
So just in case anybody's got any questions, we'd love to hear from some people. By the way, if you have any questions, and we've got this great segment coming up, ongoing now with cattle, where they're going to pop on.
That's right.
We're going to start asking them questions. So if you've got any questions that you're like, that's interesting. What do people think about that? Let us know, and we'll ask cattle, and then I'll ask the people. Kind of a big.
Colleen Martin,
who will be our guest next week.
That's right.
She's going to talk about a little bit about how the sausage is made in terms of how research is actually done.
Yep.
And why we believe it.
And we've been working with them for 4 years. So yeah, we've been collaborating on a lot of different projects.
Last thing, beef with the bank. Speaking of beef, this is a beef episode. Beef, a different kind of beef with the Bank of Canada. They came out with this kind of, I don't know, what is it, an essay or something? We talked about this before where you were kind of unhappy with their level of transparency. I think it's all around carbon tax. But lately I was just reading some of your thoughts on social media. You were unhappy with their latest lack of contrition or whatever it was.
Well, it goes back to their carbon tax calculations. I mean, just this week we heard from Statistics Canada, and CPI results came out for Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Both provinces decided to halt taxes on energy, the carbon tax. So the carbon tax in Saskatchewan was halted for natural gas, heating oil, and gasoline, and something, it wasn't the same in Manitoba, but something similar. And both provinces saw a huge drop in a 0.8 drop, 0.8 percentage point. And again,
what was it? 0.6?
0.6.
0.6.
One time drop over 1 year. That's what they said for the carbon tax. And here you saw, I mean, to me, Saskatchewan is an interesting experiment because you're basically seeing one province not putting a tax on a couple of things. It went down 0.8% in 1 month. And of course, a lot of people are saying, well, there are other issues. Inflation is dropping anyways for other issues. And it's true. What I'm trying to say is that the Bank of Canada shouldn't be speculating around policy like this because a lot of things can happen with inflation that is beyond control. If you suggest that inflation would drop by 0.6 it would actually experience a one-time drop of 0.6 percentage point over 1 year, you're basically telling everyone that only the carbon tax can drive inflation or not, in a way.
Yeah.
So or partially. Anyways, to me, and based on the research that we're doing right now with the carbon tax, is some of the narrative out there is quite, to be honest, juvenile and linear. And the Bank of Canada shouldn't be talking like this. The mistake that it made was to come out with a number. It should have never come out with a number because right now a lot of things will happen which will prove them wrong because they are wrong.
There you go.
There you go.
All right.
It was quite therapeutic. I love the Bank of Canada.
Well, don't we all? All right. Well, listen, this has been a great episode. Fun, super fun being here in front of you, of course, as always. It's fun always to chit and chat, but even more fun to be here in Halifax. So let's leave it there. And I'm Michael Blanc, consumer growth consultant, podcaster, and you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Until next week, everyone, have a great week.
Ciao.